You pray all day for peace. Then you fall asleep rehearsing fear. And you wonder why the same life keeps returning. That is the quiet tragedy almost no one talks about. Most people think change is decided in their strongest moments. In prayer, in tears, in sudden breakthroughs, in the hours when they feel spiritually alive. But human reality is not shaped only by your strongest moments. It is shaped by your most repeated states. And one of the most powerful moments of repetition happens at night, in the final minutes before sleep, the moment when the body softens, the mind stops arguing, and the deeper layers of your internal world become impressionable again. That is where many people unknowingly reinstall the very reality they say they want to escape. They spend the day asking for abundance, then go to sleep in lack. They spend the day asking for healing, then fall asleep inside worry, tension, and internal defeat. They spend the day praying for love, then end the night replaying rejection. And because the modern world understands almost nothing about inner mechanics, people keep assuming the problem is that God did not hear them. But often, the deeper problem is this. You are asking for one reality in prayer, while installing another one in your nervous system before sleep. That is the fracture. And if you do not understand how that fracture works, you will keep waking up inside the same life while calling it mystery. But it is not mystery. It is installation. The state you sleep in becomes the pattern you wake up reinforcing. That sentence may sound simple. It is not. It is one of the most overlooked laws of both neuroscience and spiritual formation. Because sleep does not merely rest the body. Sleep consolidates patterns. During the day, your brain receives thousands of impressions, emotions, reactions, memories, and predictions. But at night, something very important happens. The brain begins sorting, strengthening, consolidating. What was repeated with enough emotional charge gets prioritized. What carried enough salience gets reinforced. Neuroscience has shown that sleep plays a major role in memory consolidation, emotional encoding, and pattern stabilization. The brain is not shutting off. It is organizing, rehearsing, installing. And this means something deeply uncomfortable. Your subconscious does not care what you said you wanted at noon. It is more influenced by what your system kept emotionally rehearsing by night. If fear remained dominant, fear gets reinforced. If grief remained dominant, grief gets reinforced. If peace became real enough to stabilize, peace gets reinforced. The night does not simply end the day. The night seals the state. Now think about how most people go to sleep. They do not enter the night with coherence. They enter the night with replay. Replaying conversations, replaying disappointments, replaying debts, replaying tension in the body, replaying the old identity. And then they wake up wondering why the same emotional atmosphere seems to greet them every morning. Because what you fall asleep in, your system begins learning as home. This is why some people cannot seem to escape certain realities. Not because they are cursed, not because heaven is withholding something from them, but because the old state keeps getting reinstalled in the most impressionable window of the day. And this is where the entire discussion about prayer becomes much more serious. Because prayer is not only what you say, prayer is what your whole being agrees with. You can say words of faith in daylight, but if your body still collapses into fear every night, the deeper system is still being trained by fear. This is why so many people feel split. Their mouth says one thing, their nervous system says another. Their theology says God is good. Their body still prepares for loss. Their words ask for peace. Their inner state still clings to struggle, and the system responds to what is stabilized, not what is occasionally declared. This is why Jesus spoke with such strange precision about faith. In Mark 11, he says, "Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." Most people read that as poetry, or exaggeration, or motivation. But look closely at the structure. He does not say, believe that one day, after enough waiting, after enough signs, after enough proof, maybe you will receive it. He says, believe that you have received it, not future tension. Present internal completion, that is not shallow positivity. That is an instruction about state. Because if the nervous system continues living inside the emotional logic of not yet, then not yet remains the dominant structure. Jesus is pointing toward something far more demanding than hope. He is pointing toward embodied agreement, the internal relief of answered prayer before external evidence appears. And that is exactly where most people fail. They want the external proof first. They want the bank account to change first. They want the diagnosis to shift first. They want the relationship to soften first. They want the visible world to move before they allow their inner state to rest. But the system does not work that way. The mirror does not initiate. The mirror responds. And if that is true, then the final state you carry into sleep matters more than most people realize. Because sleep lowers resistance. The analytical mind relaxes. The body becomes more permeable. The guarded structure softens, and what remains emotionally dominant sinks deeper. This is why the state before sleep is not a minor detail. It is a spiritual and neurological gateway. If you fall asleep inside resentment, you are not merely ending your day upset. You are rehearsing resentment into the architecture of the self. If you fall asleep in panic, you are not merely tired. You are teaching the system that panic is still home. If you fall asleep in inward completion, in relief, in stable gratitude, in quiet answeredness, then your biology begins organizing around a different reality. This is not magic. This is repetition meeting receptivity. This is state meeting consolidation. And suddenly, one of the deepest instructions of Jesus becomes more understandable. Abide in me. Remain. Dwell. Stay. Most people treat that like devotional language only, but it is also an instruction about stabilization. Jesus did not say, visit peace occasionally. He did not say, touch coherence during crisis and then return to fear. He said, abide. Because what you remain in becomes what remains in you. And what remains in you becomes the world you keep rebuilding. That is why the night is so powerful. At night, you discover what you are really abiding in. Not what you posted, not what you declared, not what you wished, what you actually carried into rest. If your final state before sleep is lack, then lack is what you are remaining in. If your final state is quiet internal abundance, then that is what you are teaching the system to trust. Now let's go even deeper. Why is this so hard? Why do people keep falling asleep in old states even when they sincerely want change? Because the nervous system is loyal to familiarity, not freedom. If you have spent years sleeping in tension, chaos, loneliness, or internal warfare, then peace will initially feel unfamiliar. And what is unfamiliar often feels unsafe. This is one of the cruelest paradoxes of human transformation. The new state you want may feel wrong before it feels true. A person used to chaos may call peace boring. A person used to lack may feel suspicious of ease. A person used to rejection may distrust love. Not because the new state is false, but because the old state was repeated long enough to become biologically normal. So when you try to fall asleep in peace for the first time, the body may resist. Thoughts may accelerate. The urge to check, react, replay, worry, or spiral may intensify. This does not mean the practice is failing. It means you are interrupting an old installation, and interruption is always uncomfortable before it becomes natural. That is why this work requires discipline, not performance, not emotional hype. Discipline. You must decide that the final minutes before sleep are no longer available for chaos, no longer available for random emotional leakage, no longer available for unconstrained replay. They become sacred territory, a threshold, a place where you deliberately decide what state will be handed to the deeper mind. So, what does this look like practically? First, stop ending the day in unfiltered reaction. Do not carry the whole world into bed. Do not let the final atmosphere of the night be shaped by breaking news, unresolved scrolling, or emotional noise. What enters the final window matters. Second, reduce the emotional charge of the old narrative before sleep. If you notice yourself replaying a problem, do not merge with it. Observe it. Name it. Refuse to let it become the final authority of the night. Third, deliberately install a different state. Not fantasy, not denial. State, relief, peace, gratitude, completion. The felt sense that the deepest thing is already held by God. This is where imagination becomes sacred. Not as escapism, but as rehearsal. The brain has long shown that vivid internal rehearsal affects physiology. The body responds to imagined events. Breath changes, heart rhythm changes, emotional chemistry changes. So before sleep, you are not pretending. You are practicing internal agreement. You are teaching the body what answered peace feels like. You are letting the system taste a new baseline. And if you repeat that night after night, something powerful begins to happen. The old state weakens. The new state stops feeling artificial. What felt like effort becomes familiarity. What felt like imagination becomes identity. And then the external world starts meeting a different version of you. Not because you manipulated the universe, but because you stopped reinstalling the old self. This is also why many people remain trapped in spiritual cycles. They seek breakthrough in public moments, but neglect private installation. They chase sermons, conferences, emotional peaks, and sudden revelations. But every night they hand their deeper system back to fear. Then they wonder why nothing stabilizes. Because change is not secured by peaks, it is secured by pattern. And the state you sleep in is one of the most powerful patterns of all. So let's say this clearly. You do not only wake up in a new morning, you wake up inside whatever state you rehearsed through the night. If you sleep in fear, you wake up reinforcing fear. If you sleep in defeat, you wake up reinforcing defeat. If you sleep in inner answeredness, in coherence, in quiet faith, then you begin waking up inside a world that can finally reorganize. Because reality is not only shaped by what you desire once, it is shaped by what your whole system keeps calling true. So stop treating the night like dead time. The night is not empty. The night is formative. The night is where many people unknowingly agree again with the life they say they want to leave. But it can also become the place where a new life is gently, silently installed. Not by force, not by panic, by abiding, by repetition, by handing the deeper self a different atmosphere. The state you sleep in becomes the reality you keep waking up inside. So tonight, do not just go to bed. Choose what will enter sleep with you. Choose what your nervous system will be allowed to rehearse. Choose what reality will keep finding when morning returns. And when that practice becomes stable, the old life will begin losing one more place to rebuild itself. Welcome back to the mechanics of faith